Lyra, a 27-year-old female, often found herself sitting in her bustling studio in Ethelberg, reflecting on how the severe emotional climate of her childhood in the Plain State had indelibly shaped her life. She grew up in what she considered a middle-class family, outwardly normal, yet inwardly defined by a system of profound and painfully obvious favoritism. Lyra quickly understood who the star of the show was, and it was never her. Her older sister, Kasia, 30, was the quintessential golden child. She was blonde, naturally confident, and the undisputed apple of everyone's eye. Lyra readily admitted that Kasia possessed her own talents, but the relentless, unwavering contrast in treatment compared to Lyra was like night and day. Lyra struggled to recall a single period in her upbringing when she didn't feel relegated to the role of the backup plan. The disparity began early and followed a consistent pattern, always prioritizing Kasia's whims and perceived success. When Kasia, driven by a youthful fancy, decided she wanted to pursue ballet, their parents immediately signed her up at the best dance studio in town. This commitment was total. They devoted hours to sitting through her rehearsals, purchased all the fancy gear, and ensured a celebratory family ice cream outing after every recital. These events became major productions, reaffirming Kasia's central importance. Meanwhile, Lyra nurtured a deep, quiet passion for the visual arts. At the age of 10, she was highly invested in sketching and begged her mother to sign her up for a local art program. Her mother's response was a soft but firm dismissal. "Maybe next year, sweetheart. We're stretched thin right now." Lyra, ever hopeful, waited. But next year came and went, and brought no art class. Instead, the financial strain magically evaporated when Kasia expressed a desire for music, leading to the immediate enrollment in piano lessons. Lyra learned definitively that resources were only stretched thin when they related to her. Adolescent milestones only magnified the emotional distance. For Kasia's 16th birthday, their parents provided a freaking car. A used sedan, certainly, but a significant symbol of their esteem. By the time Lyra turned 16, she didn't even contemplate asking for such a lavish gift, understanding the futility of the gesture. Her birthday acknowledgement was scaled down to a small cake from the grocery store and a generic card declaring, "We're so proud of you, Elena." Lyra recalled the bitter irony, mentally questioning, proud of what? Of surviving another year as the family's invisible child. High school graduation was no different. Kasia's accomplishment was marked by a big party. Their parents rented out a banquet hall, invited what felt like half the town, and orchestrated a massive celebratory event. Lyra's graduation, conversely, was condensed into a small barbecue in the backyard. The atmosphere was noticeably lacking in genuine enthusiasm, feeling more like a let's-get-this-over-with kind of event. Her father, in a moment of staggering disregard, justified the minimalism by saying they had already did the big party for Veronica, so this is just more low-key. The treatment of higher education was perhaps the most damaging instance of favoritism. Lyra had worked her butt off in high school, securing straight A's, volunteering extensively, and ultimately gaining acceptance into one of the top programs for fragrance chemistry. Her lifelong aspiration was to create custom perfumes. When she shared this exciting news, her parents looked visibly underwhelmed. Her mother's immediate response focused solely on financial constraints. "That's great, but we can't help much with tuition. Veronica's MBA payments are still a lot." This occurred despite Kasia having moved back home after college because she didn't land her dream job right away. While Lyra embarked on a relentless schedule of 2 part-time jobs to cover her tuition and rent, engaged in the exhausting process of grinding it out alone, her parents operated as Kasia's personal, tireless cheerleading squad. They bent over backward to ensure Kasia's comfort. They transformed the guest room into what Lyra sarcastically termed Kasia's second apartment, helped settle her personal bills, and even funded her attendance at a specialized coding boot camp. Lyra received no help, no handouts. Even on her occasional visits home, the favoritism manifested in small, infuriating ways. Kasia could mention in passing her need for new clothes for an upcoming job interview, and their mother would instantly initiate a comprehensive, expensive shopping spree. Lyra, who had to meticulously save up to buy a single pair of jeans, would be met with scrutiny. Her mother would question, "Oh, didn't you just buy clothes last month?" Furthermore, if Lyra required transportation in town, her parents reacted as if she were asking for the world. Yet, if Kasia requested to borrow the family car, there was no hesitation. Their consistent dismissal of Lyra's accomplishments was particularly hurtful. When Lyra secured an internship at a local fragrance company, a major step toward her professional dream, she excitedly called home during dinner to share the news. Her mother's first response was the ultimate deflection. "That's nice. Did you hear Veronica has a second interview for that marketing job?" Lyra internalized the message. "Cool, but can I get 5 seconds to talk about my life?" One specific Christmas proved to Lyra how much of an afterthought she truly was. Historically, Kasia's gifts were extravagant, featuring designer bags, gadgets, you name it. That year, Kasia received an expensive new watch and a custom leather bag for work. Lyra's haul consisted of socks and a $25 Target gift card. The ultimate indignity was her mother's insistence. "We spent the same amount on you both," a claim Lyra recognized as a blatant lie. The constant, corrosive favoritism profoundly messed with Lyra's self-esteem. She constantly felt inadequate, believing that no matter what she did, Veronica would always be the one they cared about more. Kasia, meanwhile, seemed oblivious, choosing instead to bask in the attention while Lyra merely just exist. This dynamic, while painful, ultimately forced Lyra to become profoundly independent because she understood she couldn't rely on anyone else, not even her own family. Lyra concluded her parents were not malicious, but simply convinced that Kasia needed more attention because she was more whatever, more outgoing, more ambitious, more their idea of success. During her final year of school, Lyra managed a punishing schedule, including an internship and 2 part-time jobs. One of these was at a boutique perfume shop in the city, the Scented Nook. The work, though not glamorous, was a source of joy. She spent her days surrounded by beautiful fragrances, discreetly experimenting with scents whenever possible, and guiding customers toward their ideal signature blends. This work was a tangible small step toward her dream. It was here that she met Dorian. He walked in one afternoon, seeking a specialized custom scent for a client. Dorian was tall, polished, and had this easy confidence. Lyra initially dismissed him as just another wealthy guy interested only in acquisition. However, Dorian impressed her by showing genuine engagement, asking about the ingredients, the complex methodology of how scents were layered, and the precise inspirations behind Lyra's creations. They dedicated nearly an hour to perfecting the bespoke blend. Lyra was struck by how down-to-earth he was, noting he never flaunted his money. Dorian returned a week later and, rather than simply leaving, stayed to chat about business, creativity, and life. Lyra learned he ran a successful startup, Novatech Solutions, that had recently achieved massive success. Crucially, he was genuinely interested in her studies and her goals. Lyra reflected that no one, especially not her family, had ever taken that kind of genuine interest in her before. Their relationship developed swiftly, yet felt entirely natural. Lyra initially felt nervous and intimidating by dating someone like Dorian, fearing she wasn't ready, but he quickly put her at ease. He didn't care that she was a student working 2 jobs. Instead, he admired her drive and passion and made her feel seen in a way she never had before. Dorian proved to be profoundly supportive. During intense academic periods, he ensured she ate, sending elaborate takeout. When she was stressed, he'd remind her to take breaks and breathe. He was more than a boyfriend. He became her biggest cheerleader. After 1 year, Dorian proposed. Lyra was stunned by the speed but said yes instantly, realizing she finally felt like I was someone's first choice. The news elicited the expected reaction from her parents. Her mother barely acknowledged the engagement before focusing on Dorian's wealth. "Wow, Adrian must be doing well. I hope he's taking good care of you." Her father offered a similar material assessment. "Well, at least you won't have to worry about money anymore." They showed no interest in the proposal details or Lyra's emotional state. At their engagement dinner, the sabotage began. Lyra's mother leaned over and whispered, "You know Adrian must have some friends. Veronica could use someone like him." Lyra tried to dismiss it, but the comment became a relentless refrain. Every subsequent conversation involved suggestions like, "Have you talked to Adrian about introducing Veronica to anyone?" Or "Veronica's been so unlucky in love. Maybe Adrian could help." Lyra realized her mother couldn't stand the idea of me having something Veronica didn't. The wedding planning was a nightmare. Lyra's mother seemed more excited about the financial contributions from Dorian's affluent family than the marriage itself. She would say things like, "Well, at least they're paying for the venue. That's nice of them," as if the wedding was a charitable effort Lyra did not deserve. On the beautiful wedding day, Kasia refused to allow Lyra her moment. She arrived in an over-the-top dress that resembled a prom outfit. She spent half the reception networking with Dorian's friends and colleagues, acting as if she were auditioning for a role in his life. Her comments were soaked in passive aggression. She joked loudly about Lyra hitting the jackpot, and suggested Dorian must have a soft spot for hardworking women. Lyra felt the backhanded compliments dripping with jealousy. Kasia could not handle the fact that Lyra was no longer the shadow. Lyra watched Kasia interact with Dorian, laughing overly friendly at all his jokes. The sight of Kasia cornering him by the bar caused Lyra's stomach to turn. When Lyra later asked about the conversation, Kasia feigned innocence, shrugging, "Oh, nothing. Just thanking him for being so good to you." The early months of marriage were happy, but the family's actions lingered. Her mother continued to pressure Lyra to integrate Kasia into Dorian's social circle, acting as if it were Lyra's duty to find her sister a wealthy husband. Lyra started noticing Kasia's behavior shift. She stopped pretending to be supportive and began making subtle digs. If Dorian posted a sweet message online, Kasia would leave a sarcastic comment like, "Guess we know who the favorite is now." Lyra realized the family was acting as if she owed them something for my success. She should have trusted her instincts and seen the cracks forming. About a month into their marriage, Kasia initiated her full-scale invasion. She began showing up at Lyra and Dorian's townhouse in Willow Creek unannounced. This was not a quick visit. Lyra described it as Kasia waltzing into my home like it was hers. Kasia invariably arrived overdressed for no apparent reason, complete with heels, designer bags, and a full face of makeup, despite the quiet suburban neighborhood being characterized by the yoga pants and messy bun type. Lyra quickly realized Kasia was not coming to see me. She spent most of her time hovering around Dorian. She would linger in the kitchen while Dorian indulged his passion for making homemade pasta. Kasia's laughter during these sessions was jarring, the kind of exaggerated laugh suggesting she was auditioning for a rom-com. Lyra vividly remembered folding laundry in the living room, overhearing Dorian explaining his bolognese sauce, and Kasia's laughter booming. Not a polite chuckle, but the kind that made Lyra's stomach twist because it felt not about the joke. Lyra attempted to voice her concern to Dorian, trying to keep it casual. "Hey, I love that Veronica's visiting, but maybe it's a bit much." Dorian immediately shrugged off her worry, claiming, "She's your sister. She's probably just lonely." Lyra knew the truth. Kasia was bored, and there was a difference. The visits increased in frequency. Lyra once returned home from work to find Kasia sitting comfortably with Dorian on their couch, sharing takeout from their favorite place, presenting the disturbing tableau of a little date night. When asked, Kasia smiled sweetly, claiming she was in the neighborhood and figured I'd keep Adrian company since you were working late. Lyra began cataloging the increasingly intimate physical gestures. Kasia had a knack for finding reasons to touch Dorian, fixing his tie, brushing lint off his shoulder, or leaning in a little too close during conversation. Dorian either genuinely failed to notice or merely pretended not to. The confrontation arrived one night after Lyra returned from a long shift. She stood frozen in the hallway, hearing Kasia's signature, irritating laugh emanating from the kitchen. When Lyra finally walked in, Kasia was perched on a bar stool, leaning forward, while Dorian stood across the counter with a stupid grin on his face. Lyra's heart sank. Later that night, Lyra confronted Dorian. "What's going on with you and Veronica?" He reacted with defensive fury, looking at her like I was crazy. He fell back on his defense. "What do you mean she's your sister?" Lyra clarified. "Exactly. So why does it feel like she's here for you and not me?" Dorian denied everything, asserting Lyra was overthinking it and needed to relax. The final straw broke a few weeks later. Dorian had started coming home late regularly, armed with implausible excuses about work dinners, meetings, and errands. One evening, he walked in near midnight. Lyra instantly detected an unfamiliar, distinct scent clinging to him, something floral and sweet like jasmine and vanilla. As a perfumer, Lyra knew every scent in my collection, and this was not hers. Dorian confessed before Lyra could utter a word. "Elena," he said, "Veronica and I are in love." The dual betrayal, my sister, my husband, hit Lyra like a freight train. She couldn't process the how, when, or why. Dorian weakly muttered justifications about how these things happen. Lyra stood there, paralyzed, watching her life unravel in real time. The following day, desperation set in. Lyra needed immediate shelter to process the devastation, so she called her mother, explaining the full extent of the betrayal and asking to stay just for a little while. Her mother hesitated and then refused, citing a vague, fabricated reason. "Oh honey, I'd love to help, but the house is under renovation right now. It's such a mess." Lyra knew this was a lie. They had lived in that house for 20 years and never renovated a thing. Lyra called her father, who delivered the same line. "It's just not a good time, sweetheart. You know how it is." Lyra hung up, realizing her abandonment by her entire family represented a new low. She spent the night in the guest bedroom, desperately scrolling through apartment listings I couldn't afford. It took weeks of agonizing overthinking and replaying every conversation for Lyra to assemble the horrific truth. My parents had known about Veronica and Adrienne's affair the whole time. Their involvement was not passive. They had actively supported it. The signs were glaringly obvious in retrospect. The vague excuses, the lie about the renovation, and her father's awkward tone. They had not been protecting Lyra. They had been protecting her. In their eyes, Veronica, their golden child, could do no wrong, and they deliberately prioritized her comfort over my pain. They didn't want Lyra moving in because it would have been too messy for them to deal with the fallout of their blatant favoritism. Lyra immediately filed for divorce. The proceedings moved swiftly, aided by the fact that Dorian had required her to sign a prenup before the marriage. Consequently, Lyra walked away from this marriage with nothing. Seeking clarity, Lyra reached out to Dorian's parents. She only wanted to inform them, not to air our dirty laundry. Dorian's mother was unexpectedly kind, even admitting that she had her doubts about Veronica from the start. Dorian, however, reacted with fury when he found out, accusing Lyra of trying to turn them against him, claiming she was stirring up drama and ruining his reputation. An ironical accusation given the magnitude of the mess he created. Dorian's vengeance extended to professional sabotage. It wasn't enough that he had destroyed her marriage. He decided to ruin my career too. Lyra discovered this when she was called into the manager's office at the boutique. Her boss, usually supportive, suddenly couldn't make eye contact and handed Lyra a final paycheck, citing restructuring. A sympathetic coworker later confirmed the truth. Dorian had contacted the owner, claiming Lyra was causing drama that was bad for business. Lyra was consumed by fury, contemplating storming into Dorian's office to scream at him. She ultimately decided he was not worth it. For days, she sat in her new tiny apartment, paralyzed, facing the imminent rent deadline and realizing the universe had ripped away everything I'd worked for. One restless night, Lyra was scrolling through social media, looking at pictures of strangers living unattainable lives, when she stumbled upon a post about a woman who had successfully launched a candle-making company out of her kitchen. The woman had turned her passion into a lucrative career, built something from the ground up. Lyra had an instantaneous realization. Why not me? Starting her own perfume line had always been her greatest aspiration, perpetually delayed because she didn't think she was ready. Now, facing total ruin, she determined that if there was ever a time to take a risk, it was now. I had nothing left to lose. Lyra secured a small loan to cover basics and pooled her minimal remaining savings. Her meager apartment was instantly transformed into her primary workspace. She dedicated herself fully to creation, relying on her specialized knowledge of fragrance chemistry. Slowly, organically, word spread. The pivotal moment arrived when a regional beauty blogger with a decent following published a raving review about the unique nature of her scents. Overnight, my Instagram blew up. The second year marked a massive turning point. Lyra began fielding inquiries from boutiques that wanted to carry my perfumes. She leased a small studio in town, a vast improvement over her dining room table, with just enough space for her supplies and a little corner to meet clients. The workload necessitated hiring Mia, her first assistant. By the end of that second year, Lyra was profitable, making enough to live comfortably and plan for the future. Her perfumes were garnering attention in small magazines and blogs, and customers from all over the country were placing orders. This business was far more than a way to pay bills. It was Lyra's way of taking back control of my life. Each finished bottle was a small victory, a reminder that I was capable of building something beautiful from the ashes of everything I'd lost. 2 years after the betrayal, on a rainy, miserable afternoon when Lyra was packing a wholesale order in her studio, the doorbell chimed. It wasn't Mia or a customer. It was Kasia, holding a baby in her arms. Kasia looked dreadful. Messy bun, dark circles, soaked through coat, and a baby bundled in a onesie that had seen better days. Lyra just froze. Kasia looked like life had kicked her down a few hundred notches. "Elena," Kasia said, her voice shaky. "I didn't know where else to go." "What do you want, Veronica?" Lyra asked, maintaining a calm, hard tone. Kasia gave her a pitiful look. "I need help." Adrian left. "I don't have anyone else to turn to, I swear." Lyra almost laughed, thinking, Adrian left her? Oh, shocking. Who could have predicted that one? Literally everyone except her. Lyra challenged her, raising an eyebrow. "Adrian left you? Gee, I wonder why." Kasia winced but continued, desperate. "I know I've made mistakes, I know I hurt you, but I'm desperate. I have nowhere else to go." Kasia then attempted to manipulate Lyra using the infant. "This is your nephew. Don't you want to meet him?" Lyra glanced at the baby, but her focus returned to her sister, and the sympathy I might have felt disappeared. Lyra asked pointedly, "Why don't you call Adrian? Isn't this his kid?" Kasia's face turned red and she started stammering. "Well, no, he's not." Lyra thought simply, "Of course he wasn't." The full confession spilled out. After winning Dorian, Kasia realized he was controlling and kind of a jerk. Shocking, Lyra thought. Consequently, Kasia started cheating on him while simultaneously draining his bank account to fund her lavish lifestyle of luxury bags and trips. When Dorian discovered her infidelity, he cut her off completely. Kasia had spent months trying to keep up appearances online, but she was now absolutely falling apart. Kasia pleaded, tears streaming. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm begging you. I have no money, no home, nothing. I can't do this on my own." Lyra, unmoved by the waterworks Kasia had always mastered, felt a surge of cold rage. "You have some nerve," Lyra stated. "You didn't care about me or my life when you were blowing it up. But now you want me to bail you out." Kasia started sobbing harder. "I don't have anywhere else to go," she repeated. "That's not my problem," Lyra replied decisively. "You made your choices, Veronica. Now live with them or go to your lovely parents. Just stay the hell out of my life. All of you." Lyra walked to the door, opened it wide, and motioned for her sister to leave. Kasia hesitated, but seeing Lyra's resolve, she clutched the baby and walked out without another word into the rain. Lyra felt no regret, only freedom. 2 years prior, that encounter would have broken me, but now Lyra recognized she owed Kasia nothing. She made her bed. She can lie in it. Lyra knew karma was at work, sparing none of them. Dorian's business went downhill faster than a kid on a sled in January. After he ejected Kasia, she did not go quietly, dragging him all over social media with long dramatic rants accusing him of emotional abuse and control. Though she conveniently omitted her cheating and financial exploitation, the damage was done. Word spreads fast in his industry. Investors backed out, business partners stopped returning calls, and his reputation tanked. Dorian was finally exposed as not the saint he pretended to be. He was forced to sell his company for way less than it was worth just to cut his losses and pay debts. One day, Dorian showed up at Lyra's studio, looking less polished, more tired, and radiating desperate energy. After awkward small talk, he delivered his plea. "I made a mistake, Elena. I didn't realize what I had until I lost it." He spoke of Kasia ruining his life and hoped they could start over. Lyra didn't let him finish. She simply looked at him and said, "Adrian, I built myself a whole new life and there's no space for you in it." She then told him to leave, noting the sheer audacity of that man. Kasia was reduced to living in a small apartment in a not-so-great part of town. She now works at a call center, the kind of job she used to mock people for having. Online, she spends most of her time ranting about how unfair life is, blaming everyone but herself. She maintains a hollow pretense of superiority by posting passive-aggressive quotes like, "Some people are so lucky, but I guess not everyone deserves it." Even the parents faced a decline. When Kasia imploded, they reverted to their pattern, bailed her out. They sold their house of over 20 years and used the capital to cover her debts. They were forced to move into a cramped condo on the outskirts of town, a humiliating change from the home they once boasted about. Lyra heard they were struggling financially now. Her father picked up part-time work as a delivery driver, and her mother started doing sewing alterations out of their living room to make ends meet. They never offered Lyra an apology or acknowledged their betrayal. Instead, they send periodic weird guilt-trippy emails stressing familial loyalty. "Family is all we have, Elena. You should reach out sometime." Lyra felt no pity for any of them. As for Lyra, her life had flourished. Her business was thriving beyond imagination. She had opened her first storefront, a cozy little shop in Chicago, a hit due to her personalized approach to creating sense. On a personal level, she was engaged to Jasper. They are planning an intimate wedding for next spring, focused on her chosen kind of family, not the ones who stabbed me in the back. Lyra and Jasper joke that the reception will smell amazing because she is custom blending a scent specifically for their wedding day. Lyra concluded that life is a lot better when you cut out the toxicity and focus on yourself. She recognized that the painful path ultimately led her to a place of profound independence and happiness.